In this lesson, we're going to solve equations involving multiple steps. So let's look at our first example here. In this example, we have the equation 6x plus 5 equals 4x minus 7. So this is the equation that we're going to solve. And when we're solving an equation, we're trying to find the value for x that makes the left side equal to the right side of the equation. Now, if you notice here in this equation, we have a term with an x on both sides of the equation. And what we need to do here is we need to combine them. We need to combine like terms. So we're going to combine all of our terms with the x together, and we're also going to combine all of our terms with the constant numbers together. So let's start off with combining our terms with our x so that we can get x only on one side of the equation. So if we want to get rid of this 4x on our right side of the equation, since it's positive, we need to subtract. So we're going to subtract 4x from our right side, and what we do to one side, we need to always do to the other side. So we're subtracting 4x from our left side as well. And 6x minus 4x is just 2x. And we haven't done anything with this plus 5 yet, so that's going to stay on our left side of the equation, and this is equal to negative 7. And before we can solve for x and isolate x, we need to get rid of this plus 5. So since it's being added, we need to do the opposite operation, which is subtraction. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides of the equation. So on the left side of the equation, we're going to be left with 2x. And on the right side of the equation, we are left with negative 12. And now we're just left with one final step here. So 2 is being multiplied by x. To get rid of 2, we need to do the opposite operation, which is division. So we're going to divide by 2, and we're dividing both sides of the equation. So on the left side of the equation, we're just left with x, and negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. So that means x is equal to negative 6. So now it's your turn. I want you to try this question right here. Solve this equation so you're finding the value of x that makes this equation true. Here's my solution so you can check your answer. You may have even approached this question slightly differently than I did, but you should still get the same answer. So x is equal to negative 3. So I started off with combining our terms with the x. So on the right side, I want to get rid of this minus 7x. We have to do the opposite operation, which is addition. So I added 7x to both sides of the equal sign, and we're left with 12x plus 21 equals negative 15. Now we needed to isolate the term with the x, so we had to get rid of this plus 21. And since it's being added, we needed to subtract 21 to both sides of the equation. So after we subtracted 21, our equation became 12x equals negative 36. Now to get x by itself, since 12 is being multiplied by x, we need to divide by 12. And we're dividing both sides of the equation by 12. So negative 36 divided by 12 is negative 3. So x is equal to negative 3. So now let's try to solve a different type of equation. So here's another example, and looking at this involves a fraction. We have 2x plus 10 in the numerator, 5 in the denominator, and this is equal to 20. This equation does have one term that has an x, so we're not combining this term with anything else. But what would be our first step? Well, this is where the x is. We need to get rid of everything else on this left side of the equation before we even touch this term with the x. And since this whole thing, 2x plus 10, is being divided by 5, we can't do anything with that numerator yet until we get rid of this denominator. So since it's being divided by 5, we need to use the opposite operation, which is multiplication. So we need to multiply both sides of our equation by 5 to get rid of our denominator. And when we get rid of our denominator, we're going to be left with 2x plus 10 equals 100. So now let's focus on the left side of our equation. We have 2x plus 10. We can't do anything with this 2x yet because we got to get rid of this plus 10. So to get rid of plus 10, we need to subtract 10. from both sides of the equation. And when we subtract 10 from both sides of the equation, we're left with 2x equals 90. And now we have one more step left. So since 2 is being multiplied by x, we need to do the opposite operation, which is division. So we're going to divide by 2. We're dividing both sides of the equation by 2. And when we divide by 2, we're going to be left with x equals 45. So the value of x is 45. And now I want you to try this your turn question right here. It involves another fraction, similar steps. So pause the video, try this one on your own, and then come back to check your answer. So here's my solution. You always want to start off with getting rid of your denominator first. So to get rid of this denominator, -4, we need to multiply both sides of the equation by -4. And when we do that, we're left with 7x minus 23 equals -44. And before we can do anything with this 7x, we need to get rid of this minus 23. So to get rid of minus 23, we do the opposite operation, which is addition. So we're adding 23 to both sides of the equation. And once we do that, we're left with 7x equals -21. And to get x on its own, since x is being multiplied by 7, we need to divide by 7. We're dividing both sides of the equation by 7. So x is equal to -3. Now what happens if you come across a question like this? What you first want to do is get rid of your brackets. Once you get rid of the brackets, by distributing that 3 into the brackets and then distributing this 2 into the brackets, you'll be able to collect like terms and then isolate your variable. Here's another equation involving fractions, but this time we have 2 fractions here. So let's actually work on this one. When you have an equation with any fraction, you always want to get rid of your denominators. But what happens when we have 2 fractions and 2 different denominators? What we need to do is we need to look at that number that's in the denominator, and we want to find the lowest common denominator. So to find the lowest common denominator, we need to look at the multiples of both our denominators, the multiples of 4 and the multiples of 3. We're looking at our multiplication tables. And the lowest common multiple between 4 and 3 is our lowest common denominator. So if we list out the multiples of 4, we have 4, 8, 12, 16. And if we list out the multiples of 3, we'll have 3, 6, 9, 12. And we've already hit our lowest common denominator, and that's 12. And now we're going to use that lowest common denominator of 12 and multiply our entire equation by 12. So we need to multiply everything. So we can write 12 on both sides of our equation as if we're about to multiply. And now we're going to use that 12 to get rid of our denominators. So let me just highlight that to really show you what we're about to do. So we're going to use this 12 to get rid of our denominators. And this is really 12 over 4. 12 over 4, 12 divided by 4, is really just 3. So I'm going to cross those out and replace it with the 3. So we've gotten rid of the denominator on the left side of that equation. Now let's look on the right side of the equation. We have 12 over 3. So 12 divided by 3 is just 4. So we cross out that 12 in our 3, we can replace that with 4. So let's just rewrite that. We have 3, and then in brackets, we have that x minus 1 equals x plus 2, and then that 4 at the end. So this 3 in the front came from 12 divided by 4, and that 4 at the end came from 12 divided by 3. So that's how we got rid of our denominators. And now we're left with this equation, and we have these brackets here. So we need to get rid of the brackets. And to get rid of the brackets, we're just going to distribute. We're going to distribute that 3 into the brackets, so that's going to be 3 times x and 3 times -1. So on the left side, we're left with 3x minus 3. And then on the right side, we're going to distribute that 4 into the bracket. So this is going to be 4 times x plus 4 times 2. So we're left with 4x plus 8. And we need to keep simplifying this equation until we're able to isolate x. So we still have an x on both sides of the equal sign, so we need to bring over one of the x's. So let's take this 4x and subtract 4x from both sides of the equation. So then we're going to be left with negative x minus 3 equals 8. And we want to get our term with the x alone, so we need to get rid of this minus 3. So that means we need to add 3 to both sides of the equation. And when we add 3 to both sides of the equation, we're left with negative x equals 11. And it almost looks like we've isolated x, but there's a negative in front. This is really just a negative 1x. So we need to get rid of that negative 1 by dividing by negative 1. And when we divide both sides of our equation by negative 1, we're left with x is equal to negative 11. And there you have it, the value of x is negative 11, and we are done.